At Ribbon, we're more than getting the phone to ring. We're about delivering solutions to securely migrate to the cloud with carrier class reliability.
Hello and welcome to Enterprise Connect 2021. It is the marketplace of ideas for enterprise communication and collaboration. I am Father Robert Balacer, the digital Jesuit, your guide to all things in the enterprise. I'm here to bring you the hottest trends and tech from the show. And speaking of that, I am privileged to speak with Mr. Greg Zweig. He is the Director of Solutions Marketing at Ribbon. Welcome, Greg, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate being here.
Ribbon is not the common name for the enterprise customer. Let's start with that. What is Ribbon? What do you do? And why are you at Enterprise Connect?
We're one of the world's largest providers of telecom solutions for both service providers and enterprises. I like to use the Wizard of Oz analogy, which is where the man behind the curtain are places like AT&T and Verizon, Comcast, Rogers, or Liberty Global. But we also support the largest banks in the country, the biggest universities, utilities, airlines, logistics companies. You'll find Ribbon communications products in all of their networks. And back in March of 2020, when we were supposed to attend the last Enterprise Connect, we acquired ECI Telecom out of Israel, and that nearly doubled the size of our company. Today, we're over 3,700 employees, and we have a much larger global footprint. Acquiring ECI has actually allowed us to move into an entirely new space, which is the IP optical network space. This gives us solutions to help companies upgrade the core of their network if they need to support the bandwidth required for digital transformation. And this is especially important for companies who do things like critical infrastructure, like governments and utilities. So we see Enterprise Connect as really a unique and great opportunity to reconnect with our existing customers and introduce ourselves to prospective customers.
Let's take some time to talk about your booth. Specifically, why would attendees want to visit it? What questions would an attendee have in their mind that you think should bring them to Ribbon so that you can show them your solutions?
Visitors will see some of our unique solutions around layer one encryption, sometimes called layer zero encryption. And basically, that's the idea that we can secure a business application regardless of the innate security in that app. So we can secure the network underneath it. So even if you have an old app that isn't as secure as you might like, you can guarantee that we'll make it secure. And we'll also show some of the tools we have around things like analytics. So we can look for the proactive trends that might show a problem before you actually see it. We'll show some of our solutions around managing nuisance calls or robocalls, and Lord knows we'd all like to figure out how to get rid of those. And then, of course, I touched on it earlier, but we'll show our comprehensive portfolio of session border controllers, and those are what we use to help companies secure their SIP trunks and migrate to the cloud. So much of what's happened over the past 2 years in terms of customers moving to Teams and Zoom and RingCentral, NICE and Contact, and so on. And then last but not least, we'll be showing some of the kind of unique solutions we've created specifically to secure critical communications for things like the military and civilian agencies. And I think what customers will really notice is that Ribbon is different than a lot of the other vendors in the space. Because of our carrier heritage, we really know how to deliver solutions for the largest and biggest multi-site environments. And so many of the folks who visit Enterprise Connect struggle with those issues. They're some of the biggest and most sophisticated telecom networks in the world. And so I think we're ideally suited to help them solve those problems. And of course, because we have that carrier heritage, we really understand resiliency. We know how to make a true 5 nines network, which means 5 minutes of downtime, including the upgrades on an annual basis. And so I think that really makes us different than a lot of the other booths that they'll visit.
So you connect the network, you secure the apps running on the network, and then you give us the analytic hooks to know what's going on in the network.
Exactly.
Now, let's be honest, the last 18 months have been very challenging for the IT crowd. What would you say has been the number one issue for those in unified communications?
Well, to me, I think that the last 18 months has provided an interesting perspective on telecommunications in general. And I think it's touched on something we've been talking about this show for a number of years, which is regardless of your view of various technologies, just overall, the traditional enterprise PBX is now in the wrong spot. If you kind of go back in time and look, it was built to manage internal calls, right? To transfer a call from a receptionist. There were lots of rules for managing unanswered calls because we didn't have voicemail and we had lots of administrative assistance. But the reality is, in today's world, 90% of that is obsolete. Today we have instant messaging, we have text messaging, we have email, and of course mobile phones. Now, I've been in this business for more than 20 years. I know that that doesn't mean we don't still need PBX type services, but I think we have to change how we think about what we're doing in this space. And then we have to focus on how external callers reach employees, because that's where so much of the value is. We have to figure out, hey, how do we make employees more accessible and more available no matter where they work? And that means, in my mind, that call control has to be located in the cloud and has to be able to securely interact with other cloud networks, including the mobile network. And I think, to Ribbon's credit, we recognized this a number of years ago, and we've been working very aggressively for a number of years to create solutions that secure this entire environment. I think that's been a huge challenge for IT folks who are used to thinking about their communications and their security inside the firewall. But the reality is, in today's world, you have to think about most of that happening outside of your domain. How do you look for and neutralize bad actors, right? How do you make all of these assets that you own, regardless of where they are, secure? And I think, again, sort of one of our unique advantages, because we come from the service provider heritage and we understand how to build these big global networks, is we understand how to help people build a secure network regardless of location. Sometimes people say, their service providers were the cloud before the cloud was cool. And to some extent, I think that's true. And I think it's one of the reasons why, if you look at some of the biggest cloud providers that are going to be at this show, they're already running Ribbon solutions inside their infrastructure.
I love the fact that you brought up security, because I think over the last 18 months, we've seen an explosion of functionality, but along with that explosion of functionality has come this awareness that the security has not grown with that explosion of functionality. We are now at a point where we realize we need to start securing our communications. We need to start securing our collaboration tools. Is this a trend? And do you think this is a trend that's going to continue?
Well, I think it's a trend that should continue. I think perhaps if we go back in time and look, maybe our industry, the telecom industry, hasn't really thought through how security really works in our domain, because I think oftentimes we have a tendency to fall back on our history of when telecom was really a separate network. And my biggest fear is that I'm going to walk in, or someone's going to walk into our booth at the show, and they're going to start telling me in a proud sort of way, hey, I haven't touched my infrastructure in 3 years, and I haven't had a minute of downtime. I don't need more features. I haven't had to spend a ton of money on upgrades because, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. But I think my concern from a security perspective is, do they really know if it's broken? How could you possibly know what vulnerabilities are in code that was deployed on your network 3 or 4 years ago? Today, no vendor makes all of their own software that goes inside of this telecom equipment. In fact, if you looked, probably most PBXs and call centers have dozens of pieces of open source software in the code, right? They have zip stacks, and they got web servers and FTP servers and databases and Ethernet drivers and even the OS itself, right? So how many of those design elements have been upgraded to fix a vulnerability over the last 2, 3, 4 years, whatever the time frame is between the last time you did an upgrade? The chances are probably all of them. And in fact, honestly, you can't even be sure that every vendor that you buy from has done a perfect job of patching everything that's inside of their own software. Now, you look at that concern, you say, wow, people could have stuff that's 3 and 4 years old that that has software that hasn't been touched in that period of time. And then you look at the cyber criminals that we face today, right? These aren't the kids in the movies, you know, who used to use a modem to emulate their MCI calling card. These are, you know, cyber criminals, right? Some of them state sponsored, right? We just saw a situation a couple of weeks ago where a well-known router vendor, big OEM, good company, right? They announced a vulnerability. Within 2 days, there were attacks underway on their devices. 2 days, right? So I think fundamentally, we as an industry need to think about security differently. We need to realize that just like with the rest of IT, we need to be able to patch equipment on a regular basis, just like servers. Yes, it's a pain in the neck. Yes, it introduces risk, but I think it has to be done. And then the second piece is we need to think about security more holistically and recognize it's just not one box that we put in place, but we have to have a plan to proactively look for security issues. And that's when I talk about things like analytics and some of the other tools. What we're really trying to do is not just protect ourselves from known threats, but look for things in our network that might give us signals that something's going wrong. And so I think fundamentally, you know, as we make this migration to the cloud, and we rethink our security posture, that requires us to invest differently and to think differently.
Yeah, if your security tools can't look for the things it doesn't know about, it's not really a security tool. It's just a filter.
Well, that's it. You're right.
I want to ask you one more question, and that is about the hybrid office. We've been hearing a lot about the hybrid office. In fact, Enterprise Connect is going to be filled with people talking about the coming of the hybrid office. As we start to bring workers back in, there's going to be a combination of the best from remote working and the best from a redefined office. What do you see that looking like? And more importantly, how can Ribbon be a part of that?
Well, you know, I think I'll give a simple answer to this, which is, to me, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. So I look at it and say the hybrid office is really just the remote office with you sitting in a different building. I don't think that we'll go back to a time when the services that we get in our office are one bit different than the services we get in our home. And so, you know, I don't think that fundamentally it's a different tool set. And I think that the tools that we're delivering today to help people for the remote office and to help people get to the cloud are exactly the same. So, you know, sure, there'll be differences, little differences, but I think from a pure infrastructure perspective, what we've developed and the environment we've created over the last few months to work from home is simply going to move back into the office.
I've been speaking with Mr. Greg Zweig. He is the Director of Solutions Marketing at Ribbon. Greg, once again, our thanks for spending time with us and dropping some knowledge about not just Ribbon, but about the UC space in general. Now, if people wanted to find out more about Ribbon, maybe speak to you about what solutions you might have for their UC issues, where should they go?
Well, first and foremost, I hope you're going to the event in Florida. And if you're there, visit us at booth 527, right on the corner, main aisle. And then if you want to learn a little bit more about us, you can always hit our website. It's rbbn.com. So easy to get to, rbbn.com.
I'm Father Robert Balacer, the Digital Jesuit. Thanks for joining us, and stay tabbed, because I'm going to bring you the best from Enterprise Connect